He's going to let me know when it's 30 minutes, okay? That means we're going to start wrapping it up.
Turn my phone on silent.
I
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
did the
yeah.
same.
Welcome, everybody, to Mars Studios and Pink Parachute Recovery. And I'm your host, Jeff Deck, and this is a Mars production. Musicians and recovery and sobriety. Musicians and artists in recovery and sobriety. I'm going to get that shit straight one day, Clay. Show number four, guys. And I'm so excited to have these three gentlemen. Can I say gentlemen? Yeah, no. Well,
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I know Steven's a gentleman. Only for Rick. These three guys here, man. And, I'm going to get to them in a minute. But the reason why I want to have these guys on the show, because I'm going to read something real quick. And remember, this big book was written in 1939. And I think that paragraph 2 in chapter 7 on working with others is in total relation to how these three guys got sober, stayed sober, and continue to do so today. So with that being said, life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And the reason why I read that, guys, is because I'm going to give you all a little history lesson here. Okay, the three men around me are humble, so extremely humble. Not that I'm not humble, but they're not going to really talk about it unless they're cued, okay, because they're humbleness. But these are the facts. That's what kids say today, right? Facts?
Facts.
They use a Z?
Yeah, and then they use the 100 emoji. Yeah.
Okay, so facts 100 emoji, yo. Okay, so check it out. I get brought over to run my last job, that clubhouse, on August 7th, 2017. Now, before I was working there, I was working for River Region, and I had a patient there, and his name was Nate. What up, Nate? There you go, Nate. Okay, and Nate wound up leaving River Region, living on the property there, doing a couple other things, but then we got him into my last job over there, the clubhouse, right? So when I came over to take the place over, Nate was already living there, and I was already sponsoring Nate, so it was kind of grandfathered in, because I don't sponsor anybody at my jobs, right? So it was kind of grandfathered in where I could keep sponsoring Nate. And Nate will tell you, when I took that place over, we had a guy living in the front of the house. I mean, you really didn't see him much. He was there for like 8 years, right? And then you had two guys living in the back duplex, one on the left, one on the right. Those guys had no sponsors. Those guys didn't go to meetings. Those guys weren't anywhere around. And then we had who we had? We had Nate living in the main house. We had Mike J. We had old Fox. What's his name? James F. And we had Ronnie H up in there. So there was like really 4 guys living on property. The place was a freaking shithole. I mean, things were falling apart. Nobody was coming there. They asked me to come there to make it fun again, to make it family oriented, to get these young kids back. Because the only people that were showing up were the old timers at noon, right? And that was it. So I come there and Nate is there. And then very, very quickly, we bring Rick in. And Rick was a patient at River Region too, right? You came before Stephen, correct?
No.
No, oh my God. So it was you in November? What day did you get there? November what?
No, it was December 1st.
December 1st. So Stephen comes from Gateway in Georgia through a friend of when I used to coach sober softball.
Correct.
When did you come?
It was like early January.
Early January of 2018. So in the matter of like 5-6 months, these are the three guys that show up at this place. And they immediately form a bond, basically, right? It was pretty much immediate.
Yeah,
There was nobody else living there, nobody else doing anything, right? And then these three guys, they start hanging out together, right? So Nate has this group of friends because he knew some people. Steven's brand new. I'll tell you a story later about Steven in his first meeting, right? And Rick probably knew everybody in Jacksonville because he went to Gateway like 37,000 times, okay? So now all three of these guys get together, and we immediately start having fun, right? We immediately start doing things. And what I noticed that had happened there is over the years that I was there, these three guys became 6. Those 6 guys became 12. In other words, because of these three guys, right? I feel, and it's facts in my head, that they're the ones who started up the change of that clubhouse, why things started getting better, all these events that they would spread the word, all these fundraisers we would do. They were there when we got the new floor. They were there when we got the new fence. They were part of it for the brand new floors in the building, for the renovations of the back duplex, for the brand new bathroom and the handicap room, for the brand new coffee bar area. They were there for all of this stuff. These three guys staying clean and sober today, it kind of trickled. It was contagious. The sobriety was contagious. You know, not that y'all are old, but this was like 4 or 5 years ago. So they were a little bit younger. So now there's this young crowd coming around because they're loving what y'all are sharing. They're seeing y'all three stay sober. And not only that, y'all are jumpstarting my sobriety. Because now I see these guys who are like 6 months into this, and I'm at like 5, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are on fire. I could remember wanting to be there. I couldn't wait to get to work to see y'all in the morning. And I think that's how that whole place kind of changed. The whole atmosphere of it changed, you know? So I want to go around the room real quick. Nate, how about you introduce yourself and just give us your sobriety date, and then we'll go.
All right. I'm Nate. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is 1/5/17.
All right, Nate, Rick.
Rick Despain. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's 9/16/17.
Beautiful.
Rick. My name is Steven. My sobriety date, Stephanie, sometimes, aka Fabio. There's a couple of them. We won't get into that. Sobriety date is November 17th, 2017, right around the corner.
And that's funny, you know, Steven brought up Fabio, and I totally forgot about that. Because the thing that we started immediately was the 7 a.m. It used to be the coffee and reading meeting, right? It's not anymore. But what happened was I had made that you had to be there. If you lived in the house and you weren't at work, you had to be there. And I remember Steven being there every morning. He had a little notebook. He had a pen. We would go around. We had nicknames for everybody. And Steven had this long hair. It was like locks. It was Fabio locks. So we would call him Fabio. Do you think that having that early meeting, guys? I know that you left early every day because Nate was working his ass off outside doing construction and stuff. But I know Rick and especially Steven were at that meeting a lot. Do you think that really kind of helped at the beginning of your sobriety?
Yeah, for sure. I remember living there. It was the first few months I didn't have employment. Thank goodness for River Region and the care center that were helping me out at that point. But yeah, I had no routine. I was new to sobriety. Waking up and having something to do, like I was very grateful for that. You know, and there were some dudes in there that with a little bit of time, it was a good meeting to go be able to listen to. And, having close friends that were doing the same thing. I was grateful for that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What about you, Steve?
Yeah. So I would definitely say that, it helped me a lot, being able to, like Rick said, have a routine. And then I wasn't really big on wanting to share openly my emotions or how I was feeling. So to be able to put it down on pen and paper and then just be able to close it, no one else has to know unless it was just me and my sponsor, then to me, it gave me like a sense of peace, created that routine. And it really did open the door for me to want to share with other people because it was like, I was prompted and I felt inclined to share at certain points. So I would say so.
So let's get now to the beginning of this all, okay? So Nate, you're living there, okay? And we bring Steven in. What do you remember what your kind of first impressions were of Steven? Like, did you guys share a room? I mean, talk to us about it.
Yeah, let's hear this because
I was fairly new in sobriety. I think I might have had 9 months, somewhere around there.
Yeah, because January you got sober.
I was standing out front and I was doing something, messing with something outside of the Jaba club, and a car pulls up, and it's Steven. And he looks over and he looks lost, and I'm just kind of standing there. I'm like, "What's up, man?" And he's like, "I'm looking for something, and I'm looking for a place, and I don't know if this is it. I'm lost." And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, man, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
If you're lost, you're in the right spot."
That is beautiful.
Dude,
he was like, "All right." So he pulls up and gets out, and it's Steven. He jumps out the car, long hair. We just kind of clicked right off the beginning, man. I was like, "I know you don't know what you're doing, but I don't either." So.
Yeah.
Is that's what you recall too?
No, that's exactly what happened. and Nate's always going to leave this part out because like 10 minutes later after we've put everything up, there were some really inappropriate gestures that only guys are going to do. You know what I mean? And there were a lot of sounds and inappropriate gestures, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be my guy. And he told me, he's like, look, if you need any money or cigarettes, something to drink, something to eat, he's like, I'll help you if I can. And I was like, I appreciate that. And then going to meetings and stuff like that, everyone was like, give it back and make sure you pay it forward essentially. And and we were able to do that, right? Like for the next guy coming in. And so it was, that's exactly what happened.
So you guys clicked right away, right? Now, we're not at Rick yet, who comes about a month and a half later. So you two guys started hanging out together, like when you were done with work at nighttime, sitting next to each other in meetings and stuff like that.
Right.
So you two guys kind of bonded amongst everybody else there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
So, and then Rick, what month did you come? January of 2018?
Yep.
Now, a little backstory on Rick, and I don't think Rick remembers this. I brought it up to him a few times. So I had Rick as a patient twice at River Region. The first time, you should have seen Rick, how cute he was. He went everywhere with his little backpack on. He just went everywhere with it.
He really
He
did.
went everywhere, right? And then one night I'm working the front counter, right? I'm a BHT before they made me the office manager place. Rick was high as shit. And he walked up in there asking for help. I actually called my first sponsor at the time, Stephen H. You don't remember Stephen coming?
I remember because I had the sock with things in it.
Yes.
And you came and got it from me.
Yeah. That is,
man.
oh my goodness. So now I don't know what happened from that point to when we got you into the club, right? But you move in January, and these two are already in the main big house, right? Now, do you remember? Did you know Nate or Steven already from going there?
It's funny. My first recollection of Steven, y'all had brought a meeting into River Region when I was in there.
Oh,
And I remember Steven walking in, and he had like black shirt, black pants, the long hair and a ponytail.
oh, he was looking for a date.
He sat on the separate side, kind of by. You could tell you were kind of new and like a little alone feeling or whatever, But such a cool personality and nice dude. I thought that was awesome from day one. And the story, that's when I first saw Steven.
Yep.
And the story with Nate, I remember River Region, man. I brought it up to him before, but I remember where we would smoke cigarettes on the steps right there. And you could see the trailer in the back where they would have kind of like a halfway house at River Region. And I remember Nate walking by there one time, and he had just broke his middle finger. So his middle finger
I remember.
In a cast.
Oh,
And,
yeah, I chopped it off.
yeah.
Chopped
That
it.
was nasty. You showed me the whole thing, Rick.
Yeah. But, point being, like, Nate was a cool dude. He was a nice guy. It was someone I could relate to. I saw him in River Region. I saw him move out of there, go to the halfway house, and at River Region, and then in the long run ended up at Jaba. And I was like so desperate looking for what the hell to do to see a dude that I like could look up to. He had what I wanted. It was like a path to follow, and it was a cool guy. So seeing him over at Jaba, that was, and had met you, and you were over there working, like that was inspiration.
Right. And I can remember I used to do this open mic night thing there, right? 4th of July and New Year's Eve, big open mic. We get, full of place, 200 plus people, right? And then we would have thousands of dollars worth of fireworks, all paid for by the people, right? So you came right after that on the 4th, on New Year's Eve, basically. But I think I had actually had River Region come for that as well.
Yeah. I was looking at pictures earlier today of that New Year's Eve. I still have on my phone.
So Rick moves in. You guys kind of vaguely know each other by face, right? And y'all three are in the main house. Am I correct? Like I hadn't gotten the other guys out of those houses yet. Okay. Right. So y'all three in there. And then, so like, how did this happen? Because I know this, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, because the other three guys who were in there, they were all in like their 50s. One guy was like 60. Right. So you three are the younger guys. Is that why you think y'all just meshed and you just immediately started hanging out? Because I remember I would always see pictures of y'all hanging out, doing crazy, stupid shit, especially on drive-ins. Right. I remember one. Yeah. Especially on drive-throughs. Right. And you guys used to you used to call yourselves something, sober something. I could have sworn one was like sober guys or something like that. But y'all started like immediately hanging out. Nate, do you remember when Rick moved in, what you thought and how your first impression was?
Yes, I do. I remember seeing Rick at River Region and kind of getting to know him just through passing, and I remember when he came, it was just
Simps.
Simp.
Simp, that was it.
Yeah, I was
Sober
waiting.
pimp.
That was it. I knew it was something.
I was
Bunch
waiting.
of simps.
Yeah.
The SIMP. Yeah. I know y'all used to sing that shit.
Oh, it's funny.
What was the question?
Your impression of the simp over here.
Yeah. So he seemed like he was a little scared, a little intimidated, just coming into new sobriety and, you know, getting into a halfway house, you know, everything's new, you know, and like you said, it was the younger crowd and we were kind of crazy and doing some crazy things, but staying sober. You know? And I remember him kind of looking like, what have I walked into? You know? Because of the way we were acting, just kind of crazy and goofy at first, you know, but he seemed like he wanted to stay sober. He seemed happy to be there, but a little bit scared, you know.
Yeah, and y'all hustled, and this is why I love my career in recovery is because I remember both of y'all in River Region, right? Particularly Nate, because and Nate shares it in his story sometimes. He was scary in River Region. Like, first of all, he was like $120 soaking wet, right? and he had this short ass, like, it wasn't even short haircut. It was kind of like just, it wasn't a Nate haircut. And he just walked around with this stare. Yo, you look like Joe from You on Netflix half the time. Like, you know, that stalker, you just stare there, look off like this. And then when Rick came over, he was just wide-eyed. He just wanted, you know, you're a people pleaser. You're like me. He wanted to do anything to just please who was ever around, right? And I know that when y'all were there, right, we started doing a lot of different things. Y'all three were the ones who just participated. There wasn't a time that you weren't there to help clean up, to help set up, to hang out at night, to wipe those tables down, to put the music on, to chill out, things like that, right? Now, Steven, do you remember when Rick moved in?
I do, actually.
What was your impressions?
So, kind of the very same thing that Nate was saying, except for I remember going to the meeting at River Region, and Nate was telling his story that night, and I remember like, it's so weird. We were talking about this outside, and I was talking about like coming into Jacksonville, not knowing anyone or anything, being away from my family, and I was super emotional in that meeting. And I remember Rick at the end of it, we would, you know, stand outside and we're all talking. He was like, "Hey man, I really appreciate that." You know, it was vulnerable. And then he moves in not long ago, but we're seeing him in passing because they would bring everyone on the buses and stuff like that, like different recovery places. And, you know, River Region would come in, and it was always exciting to see, you know, a new face, but someone that I had met before. So for me, I think it was a little bit different. I was just so excited to see someone that I was, you know, able to relate to. You know, Rick's got tattoos. We listen to similar music. We were laughing about just the dumbest stuff, and so and it was like I just met Nate, but in a different version. And so it was really cool to, you know, meet that friendly face again. That's probably the best way I can describe it. It's like Rick was that friendly face that made me feel welcome,
right,
in a very dark place that I knew nothing of.
And, you know, I read that passage in the beginning, right? But it also reminds me of that one line, we are people who normally would not mix, right? I mean, think about that for a second, y'all, right? Let's say you're not in recovery and you would you guys possibly be best friends in high school? Who knows, right? But I'm saying the way that y'all three came together, right? Now, you move into the club.
Probably.
Now, I'm guessing because you kind of knew who Nate was and all that. You meet this guy. Are you just like, man, I need to be around this guy. He's got good fun energy. Or you were like, this Fabio looking muff. like, what were you thinking?
I think, I mean, Steven, you know, that personality kind of, it's funny, like the same kind of thing he shared, just feeling like welcome.
Yeah.
You know, and Steven and Nate were doing that. I remember when I first got in there, and, you know, they had come up to me when I'm sitting out there and just trying to comfort me and make me feel like it's okay and welcoming. And Steven was funny as shit, man. I think it took us a while before we really got to know each other and communicate more. I remember when we knew each other vaguely, and when we moved into that back house, like that's when we started, really got to know each other close. And I was so grateful because you had moved out by that point.
He was there for a little bit. Yeah, he was on his way out, and we were so sad. We were devastated, really. To be honest.
once I got those other two guys out of the back house, weren't you the first one to move back there?
Yeah.
It was you, and then I think it was one of y'all.
It was him and Ronnie.
Me and Ronnie.
Yeah, you and Ronnie on the left, and then I forget who was on the right. I think we had I forget, but we had to do a bunch of repairs on
Yeah,
it.
because
too.
Robbie Stewart and someone else was doing it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what? Obviously, I told these guys before the show, come the new year, I'm going to have each of them on individually, right? But I love doing these group shows, and when we have each of them on individually, we're going to talk about, man, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now a little bit, right? But I just want to say this, man. This is why I love sobriety. Period. Forget about my career working in it for 7 years, right? But over here, we've got Nate and Rick who just got married to two fantastic women who are in the program. And we have Steven over here who's in a long-term relationship with another fantastic woman in the program. They all have cars now. And I remember seeing them. Oh my goodness, when I bring you on, Rick, we're going to talk about that whole car thing, right? I remember seeing them, seeing men broken and then seeing them recover. And I know all three of y'all know what that's about, but that's the good news. When we're broken, it's okay because broken people can be repaired. And man, it just gives me joy, and it just makes my heart big when I talk to y'all, when I see y'all doing what y'all doing, right? But we want to get to the kind of pink parachute part of the show, right? So what I want to do is start with Nate. Nate, give me one time in your sobriety that you were brought to your knees, that you utilized that pink parachute, the tools of the program to get through it. Tell us if you want to talk about what happened to you, where it was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this shit, right? And what did you do to get out of that?
Trying to think of a good story. There was multiple times that I used the program in early sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, trying to think of a good one,
Well, we could. You think anybody else want to share? Rick or Steve, what you got? Because I could talk about Stevens right away. I know what one of his main ones was.
I mean, yeah, I'll go. I don't think we're going to talk about the same
That's
one
okay.
because the one that popped up for me was my buddy Robert. That's crazy. It's so weird. Like still talking about it.
That's okay today.
So Robert has been dead for about 3 years now, and I think he was one of us without being one of us. And I remember going to a men's meeting, and again, I'm going to say the same thing. I was not big on sharing my emotions, right? Like Rick and we lived together, so I would talk to Rick, and I was going through like this mental state where, I was suicidal. Like I remember sitting in the shower, like standing in the shower. I'm not sitting. So I was standing in the shower, and I just remember the water hitting me in the face, and I just remember crying, right? And I was in that really dark place, and then my buddy Robert died. He was, he overdosed, his heart exploded, and then I got the news. And I remember going to this men's meeting, and I bawled, and I like choked on all of my words, and everyone, it was quiet, but it was so loud at the same time, like I could hear everything, and it absolutely devastated me. And the only thing I could do was call my sponsor, talk about it, go to a meeting, and say where I'm at, and then talk to God. And that was literally that's recovery 101 right there, using the tools. And then I remember contacting his mom. I remember contacting my brother because he had ashes, and I wanted to, get in touch with his mom and get more details about the funeral so I could go. And man, it was so weird because I took Kim with me, and I remember taking the ashes, going to Georgia for the funeral, taking the ashes that my brother had, and like just taking a moment to sit there and talk to Robert, right? And I sat in Kim's parents' van because Kim was borrowing her parents' van at the time. She was having some back and forth car troubles, and man, it's crazy. It's like killing me to talk about it. But so I'm sitting in the van. Off to my right is Robert, and like I could almost imagine him being there, right? And I remember looking out, and I was just telling him how much I missed him, and how much his son isn't gonna know the man that I knew, and then all of a sudden I saw this light flash across the sky, right? And I was like, man, that's crazy. It's gonna pour. You know what I mean? I could see that thunder and lightning in the back, and I got out of the car or the van, and I was telling, my brother and my girlfriend, and I was like, man, it's going to rain. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, you guys didn't see that flash of lightning back there? And they're like, we've been standing outside this whole time. And I was like, that's God. That's God
Look
telling
at
me
that.
that everything's going to be okay. And, what I just did was my way of, you know, being at peace, because there was a lot of things that Robert and I left unsaid. There was a lot of,
Sure.
wow.
And isn't that like one of the gifts that were given in recovery, that you
Wow.
could identify that today and know that was a true 100% spiritual experience?
Wow.
I mean, that's just amazing. What do you got, Rick?
Well, I was thinking it was around a year sober. My mom was living with my brother out in Seattle, and they wanted to visit. They bought me a plane ticket to fly out there, and I wanted to see family. I miss my mom and my brother. Grateful for them, and I was scared. I was scared as shit. I was in detox to rehab for 4 months to a halfway house, and I had only been in there 5 or 6 months. So I was afraid to go out on my own. But I wanted to see family. I had a sponsor. I had a home group. I talked to them about that whole scenario, and I remember getting the plane ticket, getting on the plane, and being in that first moment where I was completely alone in sobriety. I felt like in that moment, and I get out there, family picks me up. So cool to see my mom and my brother. I get there. I love my family to death.
Here it comes.
I remember walking in the door, and I go downstairs. There's a restroom downstairs in the house. And I walk in, and there's a bong sitting, right by the toilet. And that was like my first experience fully being in a position where I like see something like that. And it wasn't like a worry, like I thought it was. That's when I knew I was, I knew I was at a point where I was very grateful for sobriety, and it was doing something in my life. As I see it, it wasn't a thought of like, can I do it? Do I want to do it? Nothing to that effect. It was just a fear, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I got to get the hell out of this bathroom. And I remember, and it was weird because it's family.
Yeah.
What the hell am I going to say? They're not drug addicts or alcoholics.
No, you
They
can't say,
live
hey,
their
why you
life.
got this shit here? Didn't you know it was flying in?
And I was alone, so I walk outside and, cell phones 2020, thank God I made that phone call to my sponsor. He answered the phone. And I think for me, a big part in early sobriety was just communication, home group, Nate and Steven, that like
fellowship,
brothers, and a sponsor, just
that inner
having someone
circle
to freaking communicate with, just whatever the hell was going on or on my mind, just to talk about. And it was a relief, but that was a wild moment.
Oh God, yeah, good stuff, man. What you got, Nate?
Well, I can relate to what both of them are talking about. Especially what Stephen was talking about, just losing people in sobriety. If I actually sit here and think about all the people that we lost,
oh boy,
I mean,
we're the lucky ones.
With the whole fentanyl thing and relapsing and going back out. I mean, it's in the hundreds. I can't even remember all the people that we've lost. Going through that in recovery, and just learning how to lean on each other, learning how to call your sponsor, learning how to use the steps every day in your life to go through these things and stay sober, keep the same sobriety date, it's just, the programs saved my life so many times I can't even remember. Just utilizing the tools that I learned by staying sober. Going through things in sobriety, I mean, pain.
The teeth. Like I remember the teeth, dude.
Like,
oh my goodness.
Chopping your finger off, and now now you get you got stitches, and you can't take pain medication. You're getting teeth pulled out, and you're living on ibuprofen, and Tylenol, and trying to make it through it. I think one of the scariest parts for me was when I actually left the Jaba Club. I stayed there for about 1.5 years, and I wanted to make sure that I was good and ready to leave before I just jumped ship. Am I really ready to leave? You know what I mean? And I ended up renting a room from a guy and leaving, and it was kind of the same situation. I get there and this guy's smoking weed, and I'm like, what have I done? You know what I mean?
Right.
I just left this place where I was safe and I had all this recovery around me, you know. But I remember I went to the Jaba Club every single day.
Mm-hmm.
When I got off work, I ran to the Jaba Club. You know, sometimes I would sit outside the Jaba Club by myself,
Yeah.
just sitting at the picnic bench because I knew this is my spot. You know, I'm safe here. You know, and I stayed sober. You know what I mean? And it was just utilizing you, my sponsor. You know, calling you every day and getting through that. You know what I mean? Keeping my sobriety date, and yeah, that was probably the worst for me. Was just leaving. You know.
So think about what we've heard from these three guys. Everybody, we've heard the guys talk about death, right? Death from loved ones. We've heard about pain from like injuries and teeth and the fear of moving out and being around, finally confronted to the point where it's like when you leave rehab, right? I always tell the patients where I work, right, at Lakeview, listen, you know, you're on that pink cloud, you're here for 3 weeks, right, you're here for a month. When you leave that parking lot, be ready, because you know that BHA ain't watching you right now. You're going to turn that phone on. Here come the messages, right? You're probably going to have one by Pookie, right? We need to be ready. We need to be armed. I love Kenyatta, right? Remember Kenyatta, y'all?
Yeah.
Kenyatta used to say, I wake up every morning, and put on my armor. I put on my gear to go at it, and that's the tools, right? And then we got the fear of, listen, I'm going to a different state. I'm going to see my family. I'm only about a year into this. And then I walk up in there and I see a bong. Oh, shit. Who else used to wake and bake, right? I mean, shit. Because think about it, right? I used to drink and drug when I was depressed. I used to drink and drug when I had anxiety. I used to drink and drug when my team won. I would drink and drug when my team lost. I would drink and drug when I went to a wake. I would drink and drug when I went to a wedding. I would drink and drug because she was mad at me or the dog won't shit quick enough. True story. Right? I would drink and drug over everything. So I get clean and sober. And if I'm not getting this tool bag and utilizing those tools, I'm going to drink and drug over the stupidest little thing. And these are big deals that y'all have just shared with us. So what's your excuse out there? You can't tell me this doesn't work. Look at these three guys, right? And it has, for me anyway, because that's what kept me sober at the beginning. Most of y'all know my story, all right? I did what Nate was just talking about, and these two guys have shared too. I showed up before the meeting. I stayed after the meeting. You know what? Sometimes I didn't even go in the damn meeting. I hung out with the fellowship, having the meeting outside of the meeting. And for me, that's okay too. All right. But I was there. These guys were there. I have to be there.